Catch the Moon by Judith Ortiz Cofer. Before you read, in Catch the Moon, you will look into the troubled heart of Luis Cintron, a young man who sometimes behaves in ways that he himself doesn't really understand. As you read about his past and present experiences, look for ways he changes his outlook toward life, especially after he meets the beautiful Naomi. Part 1. Luis Cintron sits on top of a 6-foot pile of hubcaps and watches his father walk away into the steel jungle of his car junkyard, released into his old man's custody after 6 months in juvenile hall for breaking and entering, and he didn't even take anything. He did it on a dare. But the old lady with the million cats was a light sleeper and good with her aluminum cane. He has a scar on his head to prove it. Now, Luis is wondering whether he should have stayed in and done his full time. Jorge Cintron of Jorge Cintron and Son Auto Parts and Salvage has decided that Luis should wash and polish every hubcap in the yard. The hill he is sitting on is only the latest couple of 100 wheel covers that have come in. Luis grunts and stands up on top of his silver mountain. He yells at no one, "Someday, son, all this will be yours," and sweeps his arms like the Pope, blessing a crowd over the piles of car sandwiches and mounds of metal parts that cover this acre of land outside the city. He is the son of Jorge Cintron and Son, and so far his father has had more than one reason to wish it was plain Jorge Cintron on the sign. Luis has been getting in trouble since he started high school 2 years ago, mainly because of the social group he organized, a bunch of guys who were into harassing the local authorities. Their thing was taking something to the limit on a dare, or better still, doing something dangerous, like breaking into a house, not to steal, just to prove that they could do it. This was Luis's specialty, coming up with very complicated plans like military strategies and assigning the jobs to guys who wanted to join the Tiburones. Tiburon means shark. And Luis had gotten the name from watching an old movie about a Puerto Rican gang called The Sharks with his father. Luis thought it was one of the dumbest films he had ever seen. Everybody sang their lines, and the guys all pointed their toes and leaped in the air when they were supposed to be slaughtering each other. But he liked their name, The Sharks, so he made it Spanish and had it air painted on a black t-shirt with a killer shark under it. Jaws opened wide and dripping with blood. It didn't take long for other guys in the barrio to ask about it. Man, had they had a good time, the girls were interested too. Luis outsmarted everybody by calling his organization a social club and registering it at Central High. That meant they were legal. Even let out a last period class on Fridays for their club meetings. It was just this year, after a couple of botched jobs, that the teachers had started getting suspicious. The first one to go wrong was when he sent Kenny Matoya to borrow some souvenirs out of Anita Robles' locker. He got caught. It seems that Matoya had been reading Anita's diary and didn't hear her coming down the hall. Anita was supposed to be in the gym and at the time, but it copped out with the usual female excuse of cramps. You could hear her screams all the way to the Market Street. She told the principal all she knew about the Tiburones, and Luis had to talk fast to convince old Mr. Williams that the club did put on cultural activities such as Save the Animals talent show. What Mr. Williams didn't know was that the animal that was being saved with the ticket sales was Luis's pet boa, which needed quite a few live mice to stay healthy and happy. They kept ES, which stood for Endangered Species, in Luis's room, but she belonged to the club, and it was the members' responsibility to raise the money to feed their mascot. So last year, they had sponsored their first annual Save the Animals talent show, and it had been a great success. The Tiburones had come dressed as Latino Elvises and did a grand finale to All Shook Up. That made the audience go wild. Mr. Williams had smiled while Luis talked, maybe remembering how the math teacher, Mrs. Laguna, had dragged him out in the aisle to rock and roll with her. Luis had gotten out of that one, but barely. His father was a problem too. He objected to the t-shirt logo, calling it disgusting and vulgar. Mr. Cintron prided himself on his own neat, elegant style of dressing after work, and on his manners and large vocabulary, which he picked up by taking correspondence courses in just about everything. Luis thought it was just his way of staying busy, since Luis's mother had died almost 3 years ago of cancer. He had never gotten over it. All this was going through Luis's head as he slid down the hill of hubcaps. The tub full of soapy water, the can of polish, and the bag of rags had been neatly placed in front of a makeshift table made from 2 car seats and a piece of plywood. Luis heard a car drive up and someone honked their horn. His father emerged from inside a new red Mustang that had been totaled. He usually dismantled every small feature by hand before sending the vehicle into the cementerio, as he called the lot, Luis watched as the most beautiful girl he had ever seen climbed out of a vintage white Volkswagen Bug. She stood in the sunlight in her white sundress, waiting for his father, while Luis stared. She was like a smooth wood carving. Her skin was mahogany, almost black, and her arms and legs were long and thin, but curved in places so that she did not look bony and hard, more like a ballerina. And her ebony hair was braided close to her head. Luis let his breath out, feeling a little dizzy. He had forgotten to breathe. Both the girl and his father heard him. Mr. Cintron waved him over. Luis, the senorita here has lost a wheel cover. Her car is 25 years old, so it will not be an easy match. Come look on this side. Luis tossed a wrench he'd been holding into a toolbox, like he was annoyed, just to make a point about slave labor. Then he followed his father, who knelt on the gravel and began to point out every detail of the hubcap. Luis was hardly listening. He watched the girl take a piece of paper from her handbag. Senor Cintron, I have drawn the hubcap for you. Since I will have to leave soon, my home address and telephone number are here, and also my parents' office number. She handed the paper to Mr. Cintron, who nodded. Si, senorita. Very good. This will help my son look for it. Perhaps there is one in that stack there. He pointed to the pile of caps that Luis was supposed to wash and polish. Yes, I'm almost certain that there is a match there. Of course, I do not know if it's near the top or bottom. You will give us a few days. Yes? This is the end to part 1 of Catch the Moon.